Well, hello there. Welcome to the Obi-Thorn Alliance. I'm Jacob.
And I'm Luke.
And in today's video, we are reviewing Atypical, a Netflix original series. Let us know your thoughts about the show. Did you like the ending? Did you not like the show at all? Like and subscribe. It helps out the channel quite a lot. Hit the notification bell to be notified for next coming videos. So to start off with, I'll give a summary of what the show is about for the people that haven't watched it, because not everyone has watched it yet. So basically the concept of the show is that Sam is on the spectrum and he's trying to cope with day-to-day life, and he's going to an American high school, and he has goals and dreams like everyone else. His main hobby and thing that he loves is penguins. He's obsessed with penguins and how they look and how they are. So that's pretty cool. Never met anyone on the spectrum that loves penguins. That was interesting to see. And it shows his main goal with his psychiatrist, that he wants to get a girlfriend in season 1. So that was pretty cool development. And I think the show does a good well to educate, and it does that quite well at the start. What's your thoughts about the show, Luke?
Yeah, I think you've summarised it very well. I think the premise of the show at the beginning was very much about him looking for love. It was a lot more than that, but that's kind of how they sold it in the beginning, which is what got people hooked.
Yeah.
And I think being someone myself that isn't on the spectrum but knows people that are, I think the show did a very good representation of it and was great for giving understanding to those people that may be unaware of the spectrum or want to know more about it. I think it did justice in that. Throughout the seasons, that does change a bit. For me, season 1 was probably my favourite, the thing I enjoyed the most. But overall, it was a fairly consistent show that I was surprised it went for 4 seasons. I didn't know if they could drag 4 seasons of content out of it. And I think they kind of did without having too many dry or lull points in it. What do you think about the length of the seasons, the fact they got 4 seasons?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it was pretty cool how it got 4 seasons. I very much like the beginning of the show. I'll get to in the spoiler discussion my thoughts about season 4, but it did very well with the beginning educational parts, with the families dynamic and developing the characters.
Who do you think would enjoy this show? Do you think it's for everyone, or there's a niche kind of market for it?
I think it's kind of for everyone, but not everyone would like it. I think the main demographic that's for is to educate families and people that don't understand the spectrum as much, and kind of educate, and also people on the spectrum to kind of go, well, is this a good representation of how it is? And I think mostly it does a good job, and I think from that, I think people enjoy the show from the most part, except for the final bit.
Yeah, I agree. I think the representation was quite well there. I think anyone that's interested in understanding people and the psychology behind why people do things, or why people can be different than others, would enjoy this. I think maybe someone that gets bored easily may not like it, but if you have an interest in people, I think you would like this show, which makes it a pretty wide applicable audience, if you ask me.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to say, because I was thoroughly enjoyed by it, but that's based upon my interest and what I do for work. So whether other people feel the same, it's hard to know, but I couldn't see how someone couldn't be interested in this.
Yeah.
What about some of the characters? How do you think Sam represents someone on the spectrum? What things about him did you find relatable, or things that you thought, no, they've got that wrong? Or could you or is it worth admitting that, you know, everyone's different? There's a spectrum for a reason.
Yeah, I think the actor does a different job, and I think because it is a wide range spectrum, that everyone is different. He's his own individual, and I think it's a journey, and I was happy with his progression from start to finish, and I think they should have stuck with that, and that's the main nitpick that I have.
Do you think he's a character that a young person on the spectrum could look up to and take something from?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think he's quite courageous in some of the things he does. I think compared to the representation in other mainstream medias of what someone on the spectrum's like, I think this is a fair representation. They're not just showing someone throwing tantrums and not happy with the way things are going, or a non-verbal, for instance. I think they've summarised what, you know, the average person on the spectrum is more like, opposed to people that are really on the non-functional side or of the spectrum. I think, I think the actor did a great job in that. What do you find any of the themes with the main character relatable? Do you find the way he interacts with people, or the things that trigger him, as relatable?
I guess sometimes with how noise cancelling, I think that's relatable, because sometimes noise can be annoying. So that was relatable, and I guess finding a soulmate, we all want that in this world. So I liked that goal, and they kind of stopped that. It kind of changed, and that's the main problem I have with the show, is that they stopped what made the show good.
Yeah, I think so. I think we can get more into it in the spoilers, but I would have thought the show would have had more success if it continually focused on his journey in relationships, but they kind of ended that quite quickly, and then he didn't spend very long focusing on looking for love. It came more about maintaining what he already has.
Yeah.
But yeah, I still think they did quite a good job, and it's interesting for others. Who's your standout character?
I think the Dad and Sam.
Dad and Sam?
Yeah.
For me, Sam's obviously the main character, my favourite, and then maybe an honourable mention to his mate, Saeed.
Yeah.
I found him quite funny and interesting. I think he was a bit over the top, but
especially in season 4.
Yeah, I think the show, it worked with the show. But yeah, I think his dad was probably my second most interested character. I think he kind of throughout the season got a bit hard done by, like whether he found it hard to communicate with his son. He found himself arguing with his daughter, and then he also had complications with his wife. I think he was the most honest and heart-to-heart character.
Yeah.
What would be let's move to maybe a verdict, or is there something else you'd like to add before we get into spoiler discussions after the verdict?
Verdict, and then get into the discussion.
Okay, well, you go first this time.
I'm gonna give it a 3.5. Very strong show. I very much feel like they had a very good thing going. Would have gave it a 4, but season 4, in my opinion, they lost their way. They tried something else, but it lost its way. It's like, for example, McDonald's or KFC trying to make something that's not successful. Like, I understand why they didn't, but they didn't need to do it.
Yeah, they didn't need to change the recipe. If people already like the burger, why change the sauce?
No, so for that reason, I can't give it a high score. It's an amazing show, and I highly recommend you watch. The ending is kind of worth the suffering from season 4, and I just feel like season 4 is absolutely terrible writing, but season 1 to 3 is great. So I don't know what happened.
For me, I agree with some of those things, but I don't know if season 4 was that bad, but I know what parts of it that you weren't over the moon with, but I didn't really have that big of a problem with it. I just think season 4 wasn't as interesting as the others. Whether I think it was a failure, I don't think that, but it definitely was the worst out of the seasons.
Yeah.
Rating, I'm going to go with 3.5, but it's kind of is better than that. I think, the last season brings it down a notch, but I think it's a show that is better than its rating, if that makes sense. I think everyone needs to watch it, but if I had to put a number on it, it's only worth 3.5, but it's a must-watch 3.5.
Yeah.
Like, there's just shows out there that, because of certain reasons, you have to give it a lower rating, but you got to watch it. You got to watch it for yourself to see what it's about, but it's not necessarily perfect. So that's where it falls in that 3.5 for me. I think if I give it a 4, there's a lot of other shows that are better that I think it's not fair for it to get the same rating as. But it is a definite must-watch show.
Yeah.
But yeah, a 3.5, but a must-watch, which is confusing, but for me it makes sense.
Yeah.
What are some discussion points you want to talk about? What about out of the seasons? If you had to, what was your favorite season? What was the worst season?
Season 1, 2, I would say were probably the most strongest, and then season 3 was still good. It was kind of in the middle. That's when the writing starting to progress in the direction that I wasn't happy with. So probably between season 1 and 2.
Yep, I'm thinking season 1 was my standout because it was an introductory to the show, and I thought they did it really well. And then season 4 was the lacked behind the most. What do you think? What changes would have you made to the storyline to improve the whole show? What do you think could have made it just a bit better?
From the story?
Yeah.
I think it would have been more impressive if they didn't rush certain things from the journey with Sam. Like, he seems to have this goal in his mind, and then he achieved it very quickly, when it would have been more interesting to see him go out with different people. He just found the one person and then liked her and found her frustrating, instead of going through different sort of people in life.
Yeah, I think I would have liked to see maybe a bit more dating by him. I also was disappointed the lack of time we got to see him at college for.
Yeah.
I think there was a lot of things I would have liked to have seen at college that would have been interesting. I also would have liked a bit more focus on his college friends. I think they were interesting too.
Yeah.
I think that was one thing that they lacked. I think season 4 really focused on the sister.
Yeah.
One storyline that I would have liked to have seen progress, I would have liked to have seen his sister end up with the male love interest that she had in the beginning.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to that she became a lesbian and had a female partner. That I have no dramas with that. I really liked her boyfriend character.
Yeah.
And I thought that they had a good thing, and I think their reasoning for breaking up was a bit, iffy. And then they kept him in the show only for them not to be back together. I don't see what was the reason for that. That kind of upset me a bit. Any questions you have for me?
I guess with all of... Did you find the ending unrealistic? Did you find it realistic how his main goal is to get into college, and then he sees this penguin, and then he's like, I got to go to Antarctica now, when he's seen penguins there this entire time? It felt like it was lovely, that storyline, but how he raised the money, how, I don't buy that he knew this money person on the spectrum as well. It's like, oh yeah, I'll get you there if you stick with me, that he would have raised that much money and how he would have actually survived it as well. Like, he just did 5 minutes in ice training at his girlfriend's work, and then he's like all fine with everything.
Yeah, I think the ending was cool, and it was a nice way to end it, but I think you're right. I think whether I believe that he would have been able to get to Antarctica, maybe not, because his girlfriend mentioned in the last season all the things he dislikes. He doesn't like these type of clothing, he doesn't like the weather, he doesn't like the food, all these things. It's like, well, you're actually really making it clear that he probably wouldn't have went.
Yeah.
And I don't think there was enough focus on him overcoming those things to make it believable that he actually could have done it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he couldn't, but they didn't make us believe that he would have been able to.
Yeah.
I was a bit disappointed the fact that how easily he gave up on college.
Yeah.
And we didn't really see it. He was just like, oh, I haven't been going to class, I've been failing. And I was under the impression he was academically quite strong.
Yeah.
And I would have liked to have seen them emphasise on the help and support he could have got to finish college. The idea of the Antarctica trip was cool, and yes, it got cancelled, but maybe it could have got cancelled, but he learnt something along the way, and then that helped him then go on to be successful at college. But now we're led to believe that he goes on a holiday with his dad, and he's going to be an artist maybe moving forward.
Yeah.
But he refuses to draw things that he doesn't believe as being realistic. So he's being on the spectrum for him creates a mental barrier for him to actually use his skills in certain circumstances. So that's a bit interesting. Do you like the fact that his partner that they gave him that she wasn't on the spectrum? Or you think it would have been cooler that she was, or do you think that's kind of stereotypical to make out that someone on the spectrum would only be dating another person on the spectrum?
I didn't mind it as much. I did think there were some times it did feel like she was on the spectrum. Mm-hmm. I guess what was kind of frustrating is that it felt kind of that she didn't, I don't know, it just felt like he didn't explore his options and they got together kind of pretty quickly. Yeah.
And yeah, I think I would have liked to have seen a bit more on that dating side. In saying I did like her, and I think she was a good match for him, but I think I would have liked to have seen a bit more. Like, I think throughout we maybe only went on one other date with another female, and he did something really dumb when they were about to get intimate, and that was kind of about it in terms of dating for him. And then there was the long storyline of his obsession with his therapist.
Yeah.
But she wasn't in the last season. No. So I think maybe she's in for like one scene. I think they went and asked her a question and she had the baby. So yeah, I think I would have liked to have seen a bit more about that storyline and him date a few more people.
Yeah.
But overall, I think it was an enjoyable show that did a good representation. But I think there are things that could have made it just a bit better.
Yeah.
Any other things you'd like to add to the discussion?
I guess the main problems, why I said earlier with season 4, is that when season 3 ended with him moving out of his, parents' house that he's known for so long, and knowing what it's like being on the spectrum, you like comfort, you like that routine. I was hoping they were going to go in more detail what it was like going to be being roommates and dealing with bad next door neighbours, dealing with problems like that. But it's like, oh, he's fine, let's move on. Let's deal with the lesbian problems with how, the sister was wearing, she had to wear 2 pairs of socks. She forgot the other one, and then her girlfriend was like, oh, we need to complain about this. Like, that's a no-no. And they did a whole story arc about that, and we don't even know if the school changed that. What was the point of that scene boys being dressed in girls' uniform and girls being dressed into boys' uniform. What was the point of that?
Yeah, I'm not sure, but you're right that it moved away from
What?
It moved away from Sam and his autism and wanting to be intrigued by his interactions with life and how he coped with day-to-day problems, with ultimately moving on to, which is the most common thing in a show now, is a storyline about someone being LGBTQ+. Again, I don't have anything against it, but it seems to be that writers are focusing their shows on that because it seems to be what people are interested in at the moment, or it could be seen as not being like, it could be seen as being like sexist or being homophobic by not including it. But I think sometimes for the sake of a storyline, you don't need to just add it to tick a box. If it's not an interesting story, it's not homophobic not to include a gay main character anymore. Like, it's just, if it doesn't warrant it or it doesn't add anything to the story, don't just add it for the sake of it.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of where the show went wrong, with adding it for the sake of it.
Yeah. And we also got how she was successful at running and then she didn't want to compete anymore because it wasn't fun. And then when the scout was there instead, well, I think would have been a better message to not have a win in the race, at least an attempt in the race. Do they do that to show having an attempt in life is good? No, they do the opposite. They basically have a, not even an attempt, just walk away, and then her giving this monologue about another female runner that people said she wasn't going to be good enough. And it's like, how has this got anything to do with you? Your dad's been positive towards you, telling you that you're good, and I just had no sympathy towards that.
Yeah, I agree. It was an interesting story arc that they followed, and I think it really did detract from season 4.
Yeah. Did you have any annoyance with any characters' storylines, with like how the girlfriend was really accomplished and then she got a job that you just go, oh, I don't buy that she would have actually done that?
Yeah, I agree. And then, so she's academically smart, struggled with bullying at college, returned to take up a horrible job, and considered throwing away all her academics to continue in the horrible job. But then in the end, she got offered a really great job without qualifications. And did she take it in the end?
Yeah.
Yes. So that's how the show ended, with her deciding to take it. So I think it's a weird turn of events, but I guess they gave her the positive ending that we hoped for or expected from her.
What was your thoughts about with the friend, how it's like, oh, what we're going to do with him, we Sam's the main character and we get it, autism's a big deal, but we need to bring in cancer, but we can't kill someone because people with autism might be watching it. So it's like, oh, we'll make it funny and completely pointless and give him cancer that gets rid of one of his testicles.
Well, I think what they wanted to do is they wanted to show that Sam, because of his autism, wasn't fully empathetic towards other people or aware of the problems they were going through. So I think that's what they went with, and they needed to pick a big problem. So it'd be like, you didn't even notice this was going on. But then they also didn't want to kill him off because they like him. And I think it was probably funny because it's a character that constantly talks about sex, to then put that in the storyline. It's kind of the funniest option they could have done in terms of cancer. Not that cancer's funny. I think it was just something they could add that wasn't sad but was somewhat funny. So I get what they were doing, and whether it was done perfect, I don't know. But I get where they were going. They wanted us to see that Sam was unaware of the struggles of other people because he was so focused on himself.
And who's your least liked character that you found the writers didn't know what to do with, or just didn't add anything to the show?
Didn't add anything. Oh, I don't really understand the point of the side love interest of the dad.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I felt that she was kind of a nothing to the show, and they carried on about it a bit too much. The mother out of the main characters was I think the most difficult to like.
Yeah.
But I feel like she's maybe hard done by. I think she was a good mother, but her kids didn't appreciate her or thought she was too smothering. But she also did do a bad thing that tore their family apart temporarily. Yeah, so that's my answer.
Were there any standout storylines that you thought someone could go that was worth?
I like the storyline between the girl with the disability at college that was like the entrepreneur that was helping him sell his artwork, and she was starting a business. I quite liked her as a character, and I thought I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
I think maybe a bit more with her and it would have been cool. I think she had a lot to offer.
Yeah.
Yourself?
Yeah, probably the same.
Yeah, I thought that was a cool character, and I thought she was quite funny, and obviously unlike Sam, where it's an actor pretending to have a disability, she was actually disabled. So
yeah, it seems like that.
Yeah, so that added a bit to the storyline. I guess it's quite impressive as an actress to be making a career for herself with a disability.
And do you think we needed the two main storylines with the dad and mum, that we basically the granny had dementia? Do you think we need that? And with the dad, he lost his friend with a heart attack, and he was having this tennis dream.
Yeah, I think neither of those storylines are overly needed. I think the friend dying was give him a reason to go, oh, I should take my annual leave and go spend some time with my son. But he could have came to that realization another way besides his friend dying the day he retires. It's a bit disappointing.
Yeah, I could see that kind of happening. That's what they were going to do with that character.
Yeah, I think that was maybe unneeded. Maybe he could have just realized that time was short and thought, oh, you know, like I've got this holidays, like I'm going to use it.
Did you like the whole storyline with the friends, like bread mix?
The sourdough starter.
Yeah.
Oh, not really.
How the mum just like took it. Yeah, mate.
It's kind of funny because it's something that's kind of popular since people have been in lockdown, that they've been making their own sourdough. So I guess other people would have related to it more. I personally don't make sourdough, so I didn't find it relatable. It was an interesting but nothing special additive to the show.
Well, thank you for helping, Luke. Let us know if you agree with our thoughts or disagree. Like and subscribe. Let the force be with you. Bye-bye.